Hello everyone and welcome back to the Great Book of Grudges. My name is Nathan and today we're going to do something a little bit different. Today we're going to begin our Baldur's Gate 3 series, a highly anticipated game which finally released on early access on the 6th of October. Since then, I've had some time to play and I feel confident enough now to be able to make some content. For the purpose of this series of videos, I've started a fresh new playthrough, which at the beginning of this video series, it will focus mostly around new players to the series. So with that being said, let us start with our first video of this series, Essential Tips when first beginning with Baldur's Gate 3. The first tip for beginners is take your time when creating your character. Yes, this might seem obvious, but the video is intended for those just coming into the series who don't generally play role-playing games that often. Despite the fact that the game is still in early access and a lot of features are still not available, the character creation can seem quite complex. Everything has modifiers, your background, your race, your class, your skills and abilities, and while that can be daunting for players not used to heavy role-playing aspects in games, taking your time will allow you to get to know your potential character and what he or she will be able to do in terms of battles, speech checks and so on. Think of this very similar in a sense to Skyrim, but instead of just basically spending 3 hours creating a character visually, you can spend about 20 minutes creating a character in terms of proficiency. An in-depth character creation video will appear on the channel soon enough if people are to request it, but I believe what's been covered is a good enough standing for players to know how important it is to spend a little bit extra time when creating their character. Something of importance to note is obviously this is an early access game and there will be certain issues every now and then. For example, the character that's been on screen right now has been holding his blade with just the palm of his hand. There's also certain framing issues every now and then. Don't let that discourage you, as well it's an early access game, these things are to be expected. Pay attention when dialogue pops up, not only because you might miss vital information, but there might be some checks here which focus around one of your more powerful traits. Those traits themselves will give you bonuses when it comes to certain checks. For example, here, we are talking to a Mind Flayer very early on into the storyline. The Mind Flayer is trying to use its influence upon us, but we can use a charisma check. Now, seeing as my character's charisma is quite high, we get a bonus for a charisma check, +3 and also plus an extra 2 for our proficiency. This will make it much easier to pass these checks, seeing as these checks sometimes cannot be repeated in most cases. Unfortunately here, as you can see, we failed our check, even with our bonuses, with the Mind Flayer using potential enemies around the area which were already under his influence to attack us. Thankfully, they didn't prove to be much of a problem, so we can move on after killing them. Bear in mind that these checks will be very common throughout your playthrough. As you can see here, not long after we subdued one of the attackers, we were now thrown into a wisdom check. I failed this one, despite the fact that I needed a low roll out of a d20 with a +2 modifier, but unfortunately these things happen, it's very much RNG. It's indeed very likely that you'll see these checks so often they'll become almost second nature as you get used to it, and you can more or less guess what type of character to use when in regards to starting conversations. Moving on, an important tip here would be loot. Loot everything. Yes, this might sound like an obvious thing here, but you'd be surprised how many players I've talked to which don't loot everything they can. Not every item is worth a lot of money, yes, but you have 4 characters in your party in most cases, and that means that you have the weight load of 4 different characters. You'll be able to loot as much as you can and sell it off at a profit. Even basic miscellaneous items like quills, cups, plates and so on, they have very little value, but when sold in bulk you'll see your coffers rising, and believe me, it makes all the difference, especially during early campaign where you don't really have a lot of cash on you and you will find yourself in a need to purchase potions among other items which you'll need to use daily in a sense. Expanding upon the loot everything tip is explore everything too. You're going to find yourselves in a variety of different dungeons. Each of them have different nooks and crannies that you might as well look through. Sure, it might slow down your gameplay just a little bit, but you never know if you might stumble across something of interest. At the worst, you might find some basic loot, which you could just sell off to get some extra coin. Keep an eye out when trying to explore around the world. It comes in cases where you might find yourself inside of a dungeon and you might see some interesting loot in some sort of coffer. However, there are also cases where these coffers could also be trapped. As you're seeing here, I triggered a trap which not only released gas, but also flaming arrows, and when those arrows made contact with my characters, the flammable substance made contact with the flame, which ignited the whole room and killed my party. Sometimes the traps aren't so drastic, but you need to be careful about these things, especially since your characters can indeed die permanently. There are ways on reviving them of course, but you will require certain items, and you can never really be 100% certain that you'll always have those items in hand when you will actually need them. Again, this is why I'm saying loot as much as possible so you have extra cash to be able to buy these scrolls. Expanding upon the tip about exploring, you should check around the rooms. You never know if one of your characters is geared to be able to disarm traps that might be there. There is no shame in saving multiple times, and do not let anyone tell you otherwise. If you're insistent on trying to figure out how to disarm these traps, just try as much as you can. But there is also no shame in giving up for the moment. You can always come back later and try and see if you can disarm that trap. Remember, this game is based on the Dungeons & Dragons format, which means that a single character will not be able to do everything. You will need to have a diversified party to be able to try and overcome any obstacles which you might find in your way. And even then, you might find some obstacles which your party was not prepared for. Sometimes obstacles, like for example this heavy oak door right in front of me, will not be able to be opened. We lack the key needed and our lockpicking was not successful. But the great thing about this game is sometimes you don't need to overthink. You can just brute force it and blow the door down. It is important to note that sometimes pure brute force works out rather well. You don't have to spend too much time overthinking things. You will meet a host of colourful characters, many of which in their own situations. Now, you can choose to actually end up helping them and potentially recruiting them to your party. Bear in mind that some of your other party members might not approve. You could only have a maximum of 4 members per party, but that doesn't mean that you have to shun every character that you meet afterwards. You can easily send them to your camp and have them wait there for a time that you may need them. Sometimes the characters are easy enough to meet, you simply have to walk up to them and you'll see. However, what's shown on screen right now is a character that we were introduced to during the introduction of the game, where she's become trapped and now we have to choose whether to rescue her or not. I'm not a big fan of the character myself, but I know that she's quite powerful in melee combat, and since I primarily focus around spellcasting, she might prove useful as a sort of damage donkey. Even in early access, this game has a lot of quests. Don't overwhelm yourself with trying to find as many quests as there are. Try and focus on knocking them out bit by bit, rather than picking up everything and getting overwhelmed. Something which is quite important to note for new players is when you're going to be selling and buying goods. Yes, this might seem simple enough. Just put all the items you want to sell in one section and all the items that you want to buy in another, and then click barter. No, don't do this because you can end up losing a lot of money. You'll see here in this clip where I put a lot of items in one section. It's supposed to be worth 144. However, since I clicked barter, I didn't get the cash. Make sure to click the scales beforehand, which is just above the barter button, if you just want to get cash and not buy any other items. Even then, if you're trying to buy items and still have more value on your side, you could still lose a lot of money if you do not click on those scales. Inventory management is also quite important. Don't let yourself become over-encumbered. You have a party of 4 people. Your main playable character should not be the one holding everything. Yes, you can easily get over-encumbered and that will slow you down. Make sure to manage your character's respective gears as often as possible, usually around the time that you're back in town to try and sell and trade. You might have some items that you've picked up along the way during your adventures, which might be of use to some of your characters. It's better to get your best in slots equipped as soon as possible, or else you might make the mistake of selling the items. Get to know your party members. You can communicate with almost everything in this world, and you can also have communication with your party members. There are cases where special dialogue will trigger after conversations with other NPCs. This is the perfect time to get to know them. They might have some valuable information for your current quests or your main quest. And in some cases, well, they'll have absolutely useless information, but then again, that's expected from different characters. And finally, whilst your character can be considered the main character, you don't have to initiate dialogue with just him. You can take control of any other of your party members and make them take the center spotlight for a change. As explained earlier on in the video, each of your characters in your party will hopefully have different uses, so you could be able to use certain other characters for different things. This is why I say there is an importance in diversifying your party. Last thing you want is 4 characters who act the same way. You won't be able to get far with this game if you just focus on that. A final note here is just have some fun. The game itself, while still in early access and missing a ton of features, is still really fun in all honesty. But don't expect for everything to go your way in this game. This is the thing. This game is very heavily focused on RNG. Even if you have an immensely powerful party of characters, a simple dice roll can make everything go south very quickly. Take your time and don't expect to just blaze through stuff. It's very easy to make mistakes if you aren't paying attention. But with that, we're gonna end the video here. Should you guys respond to this video well, I'll be more than happy to jump into making more videos based on this product. I've got a fair few ideas on more beginners guides and more beginners centric videos, and then we can focus on going into more intermediate and higher levels for regards to Baldur's Gate. But let me know what you guys think in the comments below. I'm also certain I've probably missed some other quite essential tips for the beginners, so if you have any tips for the beginners, please do leave them in the comments below. It would be great if we as a community could help each other out. But with that, my friends, we've come to the end of our video. Thank you so much for watching. If you did enjoy the video, might I suggest giving the video a like, or even subscribing to the channel, as it really does help us out. In the description section below are various links to different social media platforms such as Facebook, Instagram and Discord. Also in the description section is an affiliate link with Element Games where you could buy loads of hobby-based products, not just Warhammer, for 10 to 25% off. Making a purchase using that link and also our special code, which is also in the description, supports the channel at no extra cost to you, which we think is rather cool. A big thank you to our patrons. Your support means the world to us. It's amazing that people want to help a small channel like us grow and get to a higher level of content. A big thank you to Gibraltar LUSC, Ryan Bertsche, Andrew Prince and Okro for subscribing to us at our Fane level. You guys are super cool. And a big thank you to Edward Yule, VS Vasan, Aaron Whitman and Shaggy for subscribing to us at our King level. Honestly, we can't thank you all enough. And lastly, a big thank you to all of you for liking, sharing and commenting on these videos. Honestly, it's because of you guys that the channel's been growing at such a great pace lately, so we can't thank you all enough. But with that, my friends, thank you so much for watching once again, and we shall see you all again very, very soon. Have a good day.